Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here for all you space detectives out there and pareidolia police alike. Let's get straight on with it. This is a set of images from Sol 1280. There will be a link below to this page because you're going to need, if you want to download these, you'll probably want this one here, this one here, this one here, and maybe not that one there because it doesn't really link up with those. So there are only 3 or 4 images here to actually bother with. I've already put these together in a little mini Gigapan and stitched them together. And I've already done the meme as well, which I put up on Mars Magazine a few days ago. And this has been getting a lot of attention actually, as you can see by the number of thumbs up here. This has had a lot of attention. So I thought I'd better do a video about it because people are really interested in this, and it looks, for all intents and purposes, like some kind of locking mechanism. Now, I've called it bolt action here. Now, that doesn't mean it's one of these, okay? I'm not saying it's one of these, okay? But you can see the pictures, okay? I'm not saying it's one of them, but it does have similarities. And for the sake of comparison, I've got some of these up here just to show you, and also this, which is basically a lock mechanism. There's a whole, I mean, there are thousands and thousands of types of these around the world that people use for windows, doors, that kind of thing. And it's more similar to this, I think, because we have long, thin structures, parts to it, and I'll show you what I mean now. I've got it up here in my graphics processor, and I'm going to zoom in and show you up close what I'm talking about. Now, before we start, let me show you the whole image. Now, this has just been color corrected and brightened up a bit, just to make it easier to see. And we got this long structure here with the part on the back that comes along. And this is where it gets interesting. We have some kind of thing sticking up here. We have a curved part sticking up there, or sticking out the side. We have a bolt here. You can see where it goes into the mechanism and comes up. All right. It actually goes in here. You can actually see a shadow there. And most interestingly to me, because this is what caught my eye, I saw the shape of this thing. Now, I've seen quite a few things like this on Mars, and I've got other comparative images that I'll put in at the end of this video to show you of long gravity-defying structures, which are similar to this. And some of them also look like mechanisms or parts of objects rather than just rocks. But this thing here is what got my eye, this thing here, because it passes through this part and comes out the other side, underneath, like that. Now, how would a rock do that? I don't think a rock could do that. I really do not. And as we go along here, it's all kind of, this would have been what looks like one long structure going right along here. And this is kind of broken, but very straight. There's very straight parts to it here. Of course, this is probably 1 million years old or something like that. It could be a bit less, but it's heavily eroded, and I would say this is not made of rock. Why do I think that? Because if you look how thin this piece is here, if this was rock, this would probably have broken off. In the area we have lots of mud rock and dried sedimentary layers, because this was bottom of a lake. So and that tends to split off into little thin layers, and it kind of breaks off into little pieces, and you can see them all over the place in this area. And this is not the same. We do have what look like layers here, but this actually looks like lateral wind erosion. Some of this, these lines here, you've got these lines coming along like that. That's erosion. But what we have is a very straight structure that comes all the way along here. It's probably got some sediment or mud kind of stuck to it here, which is encrusted and dried out. And you've got an upright mechanism there, or part. But I mean, this is the business end here. This is where the interesting parts are. That in particular. coming down there like that, you can see that actually goes through, as I just showed you. And then we've got a thin part here with a kind of larger bit on the end. I mean, this is obviously not in very good condition, because it could have been here for 1 million years, could have been here 50,000 years, don't know. But I would say it's very old. And it doesn't look like rock, but when you actually enhance the image, let's go a bit brighter. It really gets quite shiny, and it's quite bright. It gets quite reflective, unlike some of the rock down here. This is much brighter. So the luminosity says to me that this is some kind of alloy or something. I couldn't tell you what type of alloy, but if it was a metal like steel or iron or something like that, it would be very rusty and probably would have degraded further, although the lack of oxygen and moisture on Mars would mean it would last for much, much longer than the equivalent would do on Earth. So who knows what it's made of? I mean, but to me it looks like some kind of heavily pitted and eroded metal alloy of some sort that is eroded, and the mud and sand's kind of blown away around it. This may have been buried for 1 million years in mud, and the mud's kind of eroded away and turned into dust. The wind's kind of blown it all off. Who knows? I mean, but it's quite long. I'd say this altogether is about 3 foot, maybe 4. It could be less. Don't know exactly. It's not very far from the rover. It's right on the ground. I've actually tilted this round. If I show the folder here, this is what the raw images look like. They're at an angle like this, and in fact, in some ways, you can see it better like that. You can actually see the detail pretty well. So what I'll do a load of clips and close-ups of this and put them in at the end in a minute, just to show you those details. Now, this is a completely raw image, and it's really nice and clear. So this is right on the ground, just in front of the rover. So we've got good detail, and the image is pretty clear, and the lighting's pretty good. Some people have, in the comments on Facebook, on ArtAlienTV, Mars Magazine, have said that the shadow doesn't match up, but actually, I think it does. But when you see it at this angle, it does kind of work out. It matches. It's just quite a wide shadow for a narrow object, but it's due to the angle. And of course, when I showed it on the Mars Magazine, I showed the enhanced meme clip with the original just there. Now that's been rotated round, so that kind of makes the shadow look a bit odd because you're not seeing it from the same angle. Okay, so I hope that clears that up anyway. But I mean, this says it all really. This is the most interesting part of the image, and this part here, I've done a little clip. Object passes through here. You can clearly see, because I've increased the contrast on this, how that goes behind this edge, which comes to there, and then comes out there, like that, okay? Rocks don't do that. This is some kind of mechanical device. And there's the bolt. Let's show you the bolt. I've darkened it and brightened it there, and you can see where it goes into this, and we've got these parts here also, okay, coming round. And the bolt comes down and it goes into it like that. Now, was this part of a door? Was it part of a window? Was it part of a locking mechanism on a ship, for instance, like a bulkhead? Could have been. I mean, I have found what resemble shipwrecks in the area, and this was a massive lake, 93 kilometres wide. So it could be a bulkhead locking mechanism. Who knows? It may have been part of a ship and an internal door that would lock one of the bulkheads off to stop the ship from sinking or flooding. Who knows? But it's hard to say either way, but it really does look like a manufactured object that is heavily eroded and pitted and worn away, and it's just too good to be a rock. I think it's just too intricate, and that bolt detail and this thing here really say it to me. You've got some very interesting details here. Let's have a look at the other end of it a bit more. I'll put loads of little close-ups in of this in a minute, so you'll see all this in fine detail in a minute, okay? But let's look at the whole thing. Actually, we've got it here. And I haven't really examined this end as much. I mean, you've got parallel parts here, see? That's interesting. And this is obviously broken up, and it's kind of, it's split just here, then it angles down here where it's kind of broken. I mean, could it be a part of a shipwreck? I don't see why it shouldn't be. There are boat wrecks and ruined buildings and every other type of structure you can imagine, including pyramids in the area, up on the mountain. So why not? Some very tantalising details here. And if this was just mud rock, like there is in the area, sedimentary mud layers, then this would have broken just here. That would have snapped, because the weight of this would have broken it. So there are lots of gravity-defying and strange-looking ventifacts in the area, and I will put some of those in a minute as well for you to look at, because there are some really weird-looking things that look like parts of mechanisms and parts of some kind of structures that have eroded and broken off and then become semi-fossilized in mud and then left there at the bottom of the crater for perhaps 1 million years. What it reminded me of, and I think it was Vladimir that put up a thing on Facebook. I'll just show you that. I'll go back to this. There's really interesting comments here, and Vlad put this image up of a door locking mechanism, and I thought, yeah, it's got the little bolts and levers and things sticking up. Now, I'm not sure it is one of these, but there are similarities. The thing is, the way these things are built, like we have here, are very similar to locking mechanisms that you would get in a door frame or a window frame, a modern glazed unit or something. There are physical similarities because it is basically a locking mechanism. That's why it looks similar to perhaps one of these. We've got a whole bunch of them down here. I mean, all you got to do is go on Google or whatever and type in bolt action, or type in lock mechanism like I've done here, and you will see thousands upon thousands of different types of these things, and they all have similarities, but they all have great differences as well in actual design. But a common one would be something like this, where you have the actual fat main part, the chunky sort of locking part here, and then a long sort of alloy kind of strip of metal along here with the bolts that kind of slide up and down. You know, this is what we would get on a double glazed unit. Yeah, UPVC hardware. See that? So you could go on forever looking at these and finding similarities, but you're never going to find anything exactly the same because it's a different planet. But basic physics and basic engineering would, I would think, at some point been very similar on Mars. We don't have any evidence that they've all been flying around in flying saucers because we haven't actually filmed any of them, or not up close anyway, so we don't actually know where a lot of these things are from. So, but in the past they would have had ships, they would have had probably cars and tanks and all the other type of vehicles and things like that as well, as I have shown on my channel, and a few other people have as well. So they did have vehicles, they would have had ships and buildings, and they would have had locking mechanisms and doors and windows and all the other things that come along with that. They may not have been the same, but the basic principles of engineering for such things would be the same. Because to solve an engineering problem, you have to come up with an engineering solution, which often means a similar kind of locking, sliding bolt mechanism. Okay? So I'll call it a day now. I've already gone on too long here. Come along to ArtAlienTV Mars magazine. What I'll do is I'll put the pan I've done of this up on here, and I'll also put this up again, and any more clips I do, I'll put a bunch of them up on there, so you can come along and download them for free and share them, do what you like with them. Okay, so you can have a look at this up close. I'll put this JPEG up there. I think it's about 9 megabytes, so it's not massive. And close-up clips coming up of this in a second. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please give the thumbs up if you can, it really helps. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'll see you soon.